Welcome to the Chronicles of Rome, Episode 11, The Latin War, Rome Breaks the League. By the late 340s BCE, Rome stood at a crossroads of influence and anxiety. The First Samnite War had expanded its prestige southward, but with every step forward came shifting balances at home. Among the most unsettled were Rome's old allies, the Latin cities. For generations, Rome and the Latin League had fought together. Bound by the Foedus Cassianum, a mutual defense treaty forged in the early Republic, Rome and the Latin cities had battled Volsi, Aequi, and other threats side by side. But now, the alliance was fraying, not because of defeat, but because of Roman success. The war in Campania had altered everything. Rome had intervened in a conflict beyond Latium, sending armies to defend Capua and fight the Samnites without formally consulting its Latin allies. To Latin leaders, this was more than arrogance. It was a breach of the ancient pact, a signal that Rome no longer saw the League as an equal partner. Latium seethed with unease. Cities like Tibur, Praeneste, Velitrae, and Antium began coordinating in secret. Others, like Laurentum and Nomentum, stayed loyal to Rome. Even the Hernici, Rome's longtime allies, were divided. Some towns held firm, others began to waver. The Volsci, largely subdued by this point, contributed remnant support to the Latin cause, especially from coastal strongholds like Antium. Years earlier, Rome's clashes with the Aurunci had hinted at growing instability in the region. Now that unease boiled over. In 340 BCE, a coalition of Latin cities declared open resistance. Rome prepared for war. Ironically, Rome's allies in the recent Samnite War, the Samnites themselves, now stood with Rome. As strange as it seemed, geopolitical convenience made allies of old enemies. Capua aligned with Rome officially, though internal divisions among Campanian elites revealed the broader instability of the region. These alliances deepened Latin suspicion that Rome was no longer a partner, but a master. At first, the Latins demanded equality, shared command of armies, equal access to plunder, and rotating leadership between Roman and Latin consuls. Rome rejected these terms outright. This would not be a negotiation, it would be a reckoning. In 340 BCE, two Roman consuls, Titus Manlius Torquatus and Publius Decius Mus, took command. Manlius Torquatus was known for his severity. Earlier that year, he had executed his own son for disobeying a direct order in battle, upholding the Roman code of discipline above blood. Decius Mus, the same hero who had saved a Roman army during the First Samnite War, had risen through the ranks. He was brave, devout, and willing to give his life for the Republic. The first major clash came near Mount Vesuvius. The Roman and Latin armies met in force. As the sun rose, both consuls, according to Livy, had identical dreams. They saw one of their own sacrificing himself to secure Roman victory. At dawn, Decius Mus, believing the gods demanded it, performed the devotio. Clad in armor and chanting sacred oaths, he charged into the enemy lines and fell. The shock of his sacrifice galvanized the Romans. Torquatus pressed the assault, and the Latins broke. The Battle of Vesuvius was over, but the war had just begun. As the Latin army retreated, Manlius Torquatus struck again at Tryphanum in 339 BCE. There he intercepted the fleeing forces and crushed them. The victory at Tryphanum shattered Latin morale and drove them back into Latium. At sea, Rome scored another unprecedented victory. Gaius Manius led a fleet against Latin forces off the coast near Antium. This early naval campaign, one of Rome's first, ended in Roman victory. The prows of captured ships were mounted in the Roman Forum as trophies. That speaker's platform would henceforth be known as the rostra. Antium's naval capacity was deliberately suppressed after the war. Colonists were settled there, and its maritime power dismantled to ensure it could never again challenge Rome at sea. By 338 BCE, the Latin League was unraveling. The final stand came at Pedum, strategically located between Tibur and Praeneste. The consuls that year, Lucius Furius Camillus and Gaius Manius, led a coordinated assault. They smashed the last remnants of the Latin coalition. With Pedum's fall, the war was effectively over. But Rome's response was not indiscriminate conquest, it was configuration. The Latin League was dissolved. Each city was addressed individually, offered customized terms. Some cities, like Lanuvium, Aricia, and Nomentum, were granted full Roman citizenship. Aricia became one of the earliest fully integrated Latin cities within the Roman polity. Others, like Tibur and Praeneste, were subjugated more cautiously, given local autonomy but limited rights. Velitrae, part of the resistance, received Civitas Sine Suffragio and was closely monitored afterward. Many cities received Civitas Sine Suffragio, Roman citizenship without the vote. This semi-citizen status placed them under Roman law and military obligation without full political representation. It was a calculated compromise, giving enough to secure loyalty but not enough to risk control. Rome also planted colonies. Cales, founded in 334 BCE in northern Campania, became the first permanent Roman colony outside Latium. It served both as a military bulwark and a settlement for veterans. Antium, subdued after the naval campaign, was likewise colonized to reinforce coastal security. Colonization was more than land redistribution. These towns were Rome's anchors, fortified outposts with roads, garrisons, and legal systems. They were tools of Romanization and population management. Some became prefectura or municipia, reflecting Rome's evolving strategies for integrating diverse communities. Even the gods were not spared. Rome assumed control of the Feria Latinae, the sacred pan-Latin religious festival on Mount Alban, once led by Alba Longa. Now, Rome presided alone. The consuls led the rites. The city that claimed descent from Alba Longa had now spiritually eclipsed it. Rome had not just defeated the Latins, it had assumed divine sanction over Latium. Spiritually, too, Latium had been conquered. Rome claimed the right to speak for the gods. Modern historians, such as T.J. Cornell, have emphasized how this war marked the birth of Rome's Italian Confederation. Livy's narrative, while patriotic and stylized, reflects a genuine transformation. The Latin League was gone. Rome had replaced shared authority with a network of individualized treaties, fodera, that bound each city directly to Rome. It avoided full annexation, relied on layered citizenship, and established a flexible, durable system of rule. The socii system was emerging, a web of obligated allies whose autonomy depended on their loyalty. This was the genius of Roman Confederation. It allowed diversity, it preserved local identity, but it made Rome the sun around which all others revolved. Rome's population grew, its armies grew. Its network of colonies stretched across rivers, roads, and ridgelines. Veterans settled in conquered lands. Some Latin elites were granted Roman citizenship and joined Roman political life, helping forge the hybridized Roman-Italian identity that would define the next century. New citizens altered voting blocks within the Comitia Centuriata, shifting political gravity. Even as the Lex Genusia of 342 BCE tried to moderate power, banning repeated consulships and mandating plebeian access to high office, the war's resolution helped cement plebeian integration into the Republic's highest ranks. The Latin War had military consequences as well. The Manipular Legion, tested in the Samnite campaigns and hardened against the Latins' phalanx formations, was now fully institutionalized. Rome's battlefield system, flexible, tiered, and supported by socii, was proving superior. And yet, not all was settled. Some Hernician towns had remained loyal, others had not. The seeds of the Hernician War, erupting around 306 BCE, were already sown, another step in Rome's piecemeal consolidation of central Italy. Rome stood ascendant but surrounded, and in the hills to the south the Samnites watched. They had fought beside Rome in this war. But the alliance was uneasy. In time it would shatter. But remember this, before Rome waged war across the seas, before its armies crossed the Alps and marched through Gaul, there was a time when its enemies were neighbors. When every city was a rival, every alliance a gamble. When Latin voices still dared to speak as equals. When a republic, forged in crisis, decided it would share power no more. Rome did not conquer Latium with fire. It conquered it with structure, through law, ritual, and road. The swords silenced the League, the treaties bound its cities, the gods bowed next. Latium was subdued, but the Republic was still untested in the crucible of catastrophe. In the hills of Samnium, a trap was being laid. And Rome's newfound dominance would soon be brought to its knees. This has been the Chronicles of Rome. Join us next time as we descend into the heart of Italy for the Second Samnite War, a brutal contest of endurance with a humiliation that would test Rome's pride and forge its resolve.